Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. It is Tuesday, November 5th. This is my afternoon session, and we're building .NET apps. In particular, I'm getting ready to start the soft launch for the DMs familiar. There's a few things that I got to clean up before I can actually even ask some friends to start paying for and using this thing. Excuse me, goodness gracious. And the biggest of those is switching over from using Azure SQL Database, which the free tier works great, but it does go to sleep after a period of inactivity. And sometimes it takes long enough to wake back up again that it crashes out, or it doesn't crash the app, but it throws errors in the app, and it's a crappy experience. I've looked into how much it cost for me to run it 24/7, and that's not a cost that I'm prepared to bear at this point in time, let's say. So I've done a bit of research. I did a good bit of tire kicking outside of the stream period. Hey, Scott, what's up? And I found that Azure Table Storage is going to do the trick for me. So this morning, I finished debugging the NPC access component written against table storage instead of SQL. That works a treat. And this afternoon, we're going to start building out the quota and token usage tracking. So let's dive right in. In between this morning and now, I've already done some initial stand-up type stuff, just stubbing things out, adding comments. I'm still throwing not implementeds from all of the automatically created properties. I've identified the places where I need to also pass in that user ID, and I'm doing it as an optional nullable string right now. That way it won't break the existing code that doesn't need user ID, and I'll be able to account for it in the code that does. And then I'm just going to have to plumb those couple of resource access changes out through to the UI when I get to that point. So I think the easiest one to do first, or the one that we're going to do first because it's the easiest by far, is this token consumption entry. So first thing we got to do is we've got our metered usage access. This is sort of our abstractions assembly right here. And here is my concrete implementation. So I'm going to need a storage model for and let's call it token consumption entity. Here we go. And it's an internal class. That's perfectly fine. I don't want my storage models to actually get exposed outside of the resource access, but I do need to inherit or implement iTable entity. Bring in that thing there, and it's going to complain until I resolve its interface. So let's go ahead and implement that. Now the partition key for token consumption is going to be flat. I think what I want to do here is we're just going to partition it to records of token consumption entity, and that'll be fine. Excuse me. So how do we want to do this? I'm going to turn this stuff into just plain getters and setters. So we'll back all the way up, and it's complaining already. I know. Get, set. Yeah. Row key again. We're going to get and set. The E tag, I believe, the timestamp gets populated automatically by Azure. So we can make that into a get and set. And our E tag also, that's handled by Azure Storage. So get, set. We can override this behavior if we decide we need to, but I don't believe we have a need to do that. We can just deal with the out-of-the-box behavior for these properties here. Now, the partition key and the row key. I think I am going to CTOR that. Now, I've got a couple of constants that I've declared back here. And I think what I want to do is pull these out, pull that guy out of there, drop it here. And instead of a private const string, I'm going to make it a public const string and just turn it into partition key. Get. We're going to return the partition key. Oh. Since it's member level, I'll just give it a little underscore there and set. For token consumption entities, I don't think we're going to have an actual value here. So I'm just going to say private string partition key. And we're going to set it to partition key equals value. There. Don't need to get fancy. Now, row key equals GUID.new GUID.toString. There. Now, row key's happy. I'll just do that. That's silly. And partition key, consumption log, bitty, 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 bitty. Not sure I like that. I don't like that underscore because I do want to reference it from outside. Hey, what's up, C Films? How you doing? What's all this nonsense? Fine, we'll make it nullable just to shut the compiler up. All right, close that. Let's go over the test or the error list here. Now, I've got some actual properties I need to add to this thing. But I think I need to because this iTable entity, these things are going to be largely the same no matter what I do. And I want to to rename this to table partition ID. We'll just do that. Public const string base table name equals business objects. And I think I've got that declared up here. Good. All right. Now, let's save all. And I'm going to come down here, not to consume quota, but to token consumption entry. Let's go to the definition on this guy. And let's just grab all of this stuff. Paste it over here. Static. And then I've got some values that I'm setting to default in the constructor for this fella. So let's grab this, copy it, paste it, and move on. So there's that. So over here in the table provider for our quota access, we are going to need, in addition to our storage models, we're going to want another sub namespace, add, new folder, and I believe I've called that folder in other places transformers. It's good to keep it consistent. And I think down here under the SQL Server I had, oh yeah, context, because I'm dealing with an EF context. But let's go ahead and add a new class called model extensions. I don't know what I've called it in other places. Let's take a look. Okay, usage data transformers and subscription data transformers. So let's keep it consistent. Rename to usage data transformers. There we go. Yes, go ahead and rename it. We're going to make this an internal static class. And we're going to add a public static. Oh, gosh. What's the name? Token consumption entity. Entity. Fix that wagon. To entity. This token what's the DTO called? Token consumption entry. And I'm going to call this guy DTO. Add the namespace. And we'll do that. And whoop, Copilot already had it for me. Public all right, cool. Now we just have to fix the complaints. And token consumption entity equals new, and entity dot model ID equals DTO model ID. Oh, that's right. It's a record. Or I've got, is this set up as a record? Go to definition. No, that's an internal class. Oh, but these are all inits. Heck with it. Set. Okay, that's done complaining. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties being set. We've got 3, 6 properties we care about. Partition key gets set automatically. Row key we are going to private string row key. And I would just do this as a lambda to the user ID property, but the interface requires a setter. So I'm just going to set it to a dummy field. Row key equals value. And as a matter of fact, rename dummy, rename dummy. Since the actual partition key is derived from the constant and the iTable entity interface requires a partition key property. Setter property. These darn keyboard shortcuts that change from operating system to operating system. Setter property will just read that into this dummy value. Same idea with row key. For this entity kind, we're using user ID as our row key within this partition. Read the set value into a dummy. There. That works for me. Nice little comment about why I'm doing something weird. Otherwise, it's pretty well documented. So we got to come back to our transformers and return entity. Boop. Save. And then let's do the same thing down here, even though we won't really be reading these things out yet. Token consumption entry DTO equals new return DTO dot. Oh, that is a record, and I don't want to futz with that. So what I'm going to do is we're actually going to use an initializer here, or an initialization pattern, rather than explicit property stuff here. So we're going to go user ID equals entity user ID. And that's all she wrote. Save. Cool. Let's come out to close. Oh, I'm going to need that NPC provider again in a minute. I got no brains. Op result. Op result equals new. Try catch exception EX. Return op result. Yeah, I know. We're not a task yet. I do have to put async in here. There we go. So, GUID error ID equals string error message equals string could not log the consumption record ex.message save. Now, something I did do on the, or I did not do on the NPC access that I need to add here is logger question mark quota access table provider logger, and we got to give it the reference. I want to use logging abstractions. We use 802. Fine. Quit your bitching. There we go. And private read only. Logger. Save. And down here we go. Dot log error and what have we got here? Don't want to use an event ID. Ew. Exception string message. fine. We'll do exception and which overload do I want to use here? String. I have done some fancy stuff with this, and I can't remember the pattern I used to save my bloody life. Let's look at the SQL provider for this. See if I did anything useful here. All right. I'm not doing any useful or interesting logging over here. Here we go, logger add error. Okay, I'm just doing the error ID as a string. Error ID dot to string. Save. Clear up the empty space and result add error. There we go. Now I need a var table equals build table client for my token consumption entity dot base table name var entity equals meter entry dot to entity table dot await result equals await table dot upsert entity async with the entity I need to finish re-implementing the usage tracking, and I want to do some playing around with the AI model. I have access to a less expensive language model now, and there's a couple little bugs that I have to fix, and then it's just a couple of cosmetic things. Like I want to put some actual content on the homepage of the app, and I want to build out the feature roadmap for those people that sign up for that particular tier. Right now, I'm using GPT 4.0, and Microsoft just added GPT 4.0 Mini to the East US 2 region. I would have gone with Mini right from the start, but it wasn't available when I stood all of this stuff up earlier. And East US 2 was the region that had the free SQL Server database tier available. And now I'm not even using SQL Database, so oops. Now, I'm not going to use this response yet. So I'm not even going to bother with that. All we care about is that the entity gets upserted. Now, a much more interesting problem. Well, let's see here. No, I need to implement this other stuff first. So I'm going to have to be able to load the user. So, in order to load a user, I need a user. And this storage model is going to be a little goofy, because you can't store complex objects as is in Azure Table Storage. Cancel. What are these errors? Oh, yeah. All right, let's fix these. Excuse me. Let's bounce over here. And let's see here. Update access, DB context, templates, got all this stuff. Consume quota. User ID equals quote. And that's the async. It is the async. And of course we need the load user quota async. We've got the user ID. And then release quota, we need to add that. Thank you. Goodbye. Okay, so quota access table provider. First we need to load a user. And I think what I want to do is create a private. And it's going to be user entity. I haven't defined it yet, so it's going to complain about that. Load user, string, user ID. So let's define a user entity. Add class user entity. Add. Make it internal. Inherit table entity. Boop. Implement. Now, what is the naming pattern I used over here? Let's grab this stuff. And instead of consumption log, it's going to be users. Private string, partition key, dummy. And the get on this guy is going to return table partition ID, set lambdas over to set partition key dummy equals value. Save. Row key we'll get to you in a second. Private string row key dummy get will return user ID and set just row key dummy equals value. Send it to the abyss using dummy fields to hold catch the values that come in via the interface required setter. The real values of these properties are calculated. And I'm sure there's a more elegant way of doing this. Same reasoning here as for partition key dummy. There. Save. Now, I did some thinking this morning. Let's take a look at table storage thoughts. I am going to need well, we're obviously going to need the user ID from Entra. So, continuing my pattern of keeping the iTable entity required stuff down below. As a matter of fact, let's do something that I like to do with these kinds of things. Shrink this down a little bit. Wrong way. Pound region iTable entity implementation. And we will hashtag and region. And just shrinky dinky do. Save. I want to do the same thing over here, actually. Pound region, iTable entity implementation, and stop indenting my region directives, please. Save. All right, there's that. So we've got our base table name, table partition ID as users. We need prop string user ID. Now, I don't want to use dashes in the user ID thing, or in the row key. No, it's okay. If it yells at me, I'll cleanse the dashes out. If it doesn't, I'll leave it be. Prop string display name. Save. Prop string IDs JSON. Now, I've got quotas hung off of current subscription, but that's okay. We'll get there. And then public string subscription activity JSON. And that's all we've got hanging off of there. User quota. Okay. Good. So I do some tricksy things with my townsfolk manager. Now, the townsperson, non-player character in the game world, has got all these properties. Set owner is public, given name, all this stuff. Personality description, okay. That's not where I'm doing that part. Let's look in the townsfolk manager itself. Get NPC. This is access filtering. It's been a while since I've been in this code base. So here's filter. Where's save? Here we go. Townsperson.to NPC access model. Go to that. And serialize for storage. Oh, geez. I said serialize and my phone thought I was talking to her. Silly thing. Excuse me. And this is just a straight up. Okay. Pardon me. Instance and options. Got our JSON options down here. With write indented, omit nulls. Don't want to do any of that stuff. Okay. So this is actually going to work quite nicely to my advantage here. So there's JSON utilities, and I believe those are all statics. I can close this. My user entity is good. Let's go into usage data transformers and go shrinky dinky do. Pop out the end. And I'm going to say public static user entity to entity. This user, it's not going to be a quota. I'm just going to go full on user. Stop it. I need to add a contract to the townsfolk manager. No. Up here in my resource models, add class called user resource, for lack of a better term. Public and public string user ID get set. IDs JSON will not be IDs. It will be a list of string. As a matter of fact, that's not even entirely accurate, because add class user ID resource. Public string vendor name string, not vendor ID, but user ID for vendor. Save. And IDs is going to be a list of, where the hell did I create it? User ID resource. There we go. CTOR IDs equals new list user ID resource. Current subscription equals new user subscription. Get rid of that. Get rid of this. And we're actually going to make that nullable. And this will be a list of subscription activity. Resource. Add a class called called subscription activity resource. It needs to be public. And string activity kind, prop date time, activity date, UTC. Save. And that's just going to be a log of stuff. And it's not going to be subscription activity JSON. It's going to be subscription activity. Rename. There we go. Current subscription. Yeah. Subscription activity equals new. One of those. Bonk. And I'll come in and tidy this stuff up as I go later, as I start to build it out. User ID equals string.empty. Display name string.empty. Are you complaining about anything else? No, you are not. Okay. So, usage data transformer. This is not a user quota, it is a user resource. User resource. Oh, wait, that's to entity. Entity equals new. Return entity. And entity dot IDs JSON dot equals DTO dot IDs dot serialize for output. No, serialize for storage. Entity dot current subscription JSON is current subscription dot serialize for storage, or string.empty. Entity dot subscription activity JSON equals subscription activity dot serialize for storage, or string.empty. Okay. Save. And I need to save all. Now, over in the SQL provider and all of this stuff, our quotas are stored discretely from the subscription. They're going to need to take a look at some of that stuff in a minute. But let's see here, user entity dot to entity, and then I got to do a public static user resource to DTO this user entity. We'll do that. Return DTO. User ID equals entity.user ID, display name, good. And that is not IDs JSON dot, I believe, I have on my JSON utilities to instance. Yep. To instance of list of user ID resources. New yeah, what the hell? Probably not the most optimal or elegant way of doing it, but what the heck. So 2DTO, we do need to return our DTO. Return DTO. I feel like we're missing a wiggly brace. There we go. If I really can't stand this form of null check, or this form of check against a Boolean value, because that is so hard for my old man eyes to see. I will die on that hill that that's easier to read and therefore is the superior way of doing it. I don't care if it saves an extra 8 keystrokes. I am so unconcerned about that. String dot is null or white space entity dot subscription ID. Current subscription JSON equals false. And the other JSON property, string dot is null or white space entity dot subscription activity JSON is false. User subscription, I believe, is the type. Yep. Sub equals entity dot and just for readability, I believe it's dot to instance. It is I like to do the 1 dot per line thing. And that's a lot tidier too. Dot to instance of user subscription or a new user subscription. And DTO dot current subscription equals sub. And the last one, list of subscription activity resource. And we're just going to do stop that. Do that. And hit that. Matter of fact, let's just do this. And I'm going to throw that down on this line. I'm going to throw the equals on this line. So Scott and C Films, I've never asked, if you're still here, where are y'all from? Equals list. Oh, hello. Hey, C Films, where do you call home, man? I am from Earth. Good to meet you, me too, I think. At least that's what my parents tell me. They said the stork that delivered me had too many bloody eyes, but and tentacles. So does that even make it a stork? Who knows? But yeah, I was just curious. I'm in the U.S., but I am not a citizen, so I cannot do the thing. Okay, gotcha. I'm in the U.S., and I cannot do the thing that all of the U.S. citizens or hopefully all, if not all, then many of the U.S. citizens are doing today. And if you are a U.S. citizen and have not yet done the thing and you are allowed to do the thing, please go do the thing at some point today. I'm not going to tell you whose bubble to fill in or nothing like that. I'm just going to ask you to go do that thing. I have my preferences. I have my hopes. I've got my fingers crossed for one of the two people at the very top of the ticket to have more people do the thing for them than for the other one. But I'm not going to say, because I don't really like to get into political discussions on this stream. It's not the place for that. I'm here for the tech. So Quota Access Table Provider load user is going to do some stuff. And I am going to do that stuff offline because it's just typical Azure Table Access. So I'm going to try and get the rest of this class implemented offline. And then we'll talk through that change tomorrow. And once this is re-implemented, we'll be able to play around with the language model and the prompt that I wanted to do, as well as fix those last couple of bugs that I want to fix. And then this thing will be, okay, so you're in Seattle, I hope? I hope I'm right. That's the only part of your name that I could map to a city. I've never been to Seattle, man. I would love to. I'm Gen X, and I was coming of age when Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and all of those awesome bands were just starting to hit. I was in my first semester of university when Smells Like Teen Spirit dropped. And let me tell you, that blew everybody's minds. Um, I've never been to Seattle. I would love to get out there at some point. Um, Actually, I'm going to hang on stream while I do some more of this code, but I do need to pull and be right back. So I'm going to do that. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. And I like just chatting with people. So I'll bear with me for a second. All right, here I am. Sorry about that. So yeah, I've always wanted to get out to Seattle. I just haven't had a reason to buy the plane ticket. I have a stepdaughter in Portland, Oregon. My wife's been out there, or she's just outside of Portland, I guess. Well, no, I think they're a little bit more inland than Portland is. But I have a stepdaughter, and she and her family, and my only grandkids so far live in Oregon. My wife's been out there, and she loved it. Uh, the only part of the West Coast that I've been to is the San Francisco Bay Area, San Fran itself, Half Moon Bay, San Jose. I was in San Jose for some training at the Silicon Valley Microsoft campus a few years ago. And then prior to that, in the late 90s, I was in San Francisco with my band. Some pharmaceutical executive saw my band playing, was getting married, and hired us to play his wedding, flew us out to San Fran, put us up in a hotel, gave us a per diem, paid us a ridiculous amount of money just because he loved our vibe. And that was a lot of fun. I've got fond memories of that part of the country. I really do want to get out to Seattle at some point, though. Like, just to see how far into the Microsoft campus I can walk before somebody comes and tells me to bugger off. Because even though most of my hardware is Apple, I still actually have quite a lot of admiration for Microsoft. So I need a user entity. I'm not even going to use the op result pattern here because this is a private thing, but I am going to async this, I think. Task. Here we go. Now, var. And let's try and use consistent var table. Var table equals build table client And I need the user entity dot base table name. And let's make sure these values are correct. Good. And var equals. Yeah, so I've heard. And rainy. A lot more rainy. The times I was out there, it was not the rainy season. Await table.get entity async. User entity.table partition ID. And I am using user ID as my row key. So I can pop out to the end here. And if, well, no. This does need to be nullable. Or you just return user entity. And I don't want to actually work with the entity. I want to work with the resource. .to DTO. Top 10 cities for the amount of rain per year. No, it is not. Oh, look, permissive lawn. Guess what? Bonk. Goodbye, spam bot. Okay, so I need to bring in where's my transformers? Using game tools. Oh, look. Ah! Another one. Goodbye. All right, game tools dot. Dang blasted. Okay, yeah. It's mostly like light mist, a lot of fog, stuff like that. Okay, there's my transformers. User resource, 2DTO user entity. Okay. So should be able to come back out here. And this feller. Oh, I know what I did wrong. So I can't just go toEntity.2DTO willy-nilly all over the darn place. To user entity dot to user DTO save. I gotta return user entity dot to user DTO. Bonk, what are you complaining about? Oh, that's the response. Duh. Dot value. And I should probably come in here and say if entity is null, return null. Excuse me. There. Just short circuit that whole bloody process. And here we are. Now, let's do load user quota async. User resource equals await, and this needs to become an async task. Load user ID. Now, op result user quota result equals new user quota payload equals null result dot payload equals payload. Move you up here, bump you down, return result, try. Catch, exception EX, and GUID error ID equals GUID.new GUID. Logger if not null, log error, go. Result.add error and close the catch block. All right. If user is null, throw new argument, exception. Pardon me. User with ID. User ID could not be loaded. And we're just going to chuck that down to the exception block there. Syracuse. You know what? I could believe that. As far in terms of in inches, yeah, 172 days of precipitation. Yeah, based on where they are relative to the Great Lakes, because they're just east of Lake Ontario. They're a little bit south, and I don't think there's any mountain ranges between where Syracuse is and the Atlantic Ocean. So you're going to end up with like a lot of colliding air masses that are carrying a lot of water back and forth between the excuse me, back and forth between the lakes and the ocean, like smashing into each other and just dumping it on whatever happens to be nearby. If I'm thinking about where Syracuse is accurately, it's sort of like south and east of Rochester, like significantly further east of Rochester, not quite to Albany. I lived in Buffalo for a little bit after I got married. Excuse me. Pardon me, goodness. All right, now if user dot current subscription is null, user with ID does not have a subscription. Pop out here, close that guard. Woof. Yeah. 117.2. Yeah, that's about 6 feet of rain per year. That's a lot. That's an awful lot to be falling in the mountains. Holy cow. I'm trying to remember how many feet of rain. Okay, so that's 2 meters of rain, almost 3 meters of rain a year for that place. So you remember Hurricane Helene that hit here about a month and a half ago? It dumped a meter, so about a yard, maybe a yard plus of rain on the mountains just an hour or so west of me in the span of about 2 days. And holy smokes, place got wrecked. So if our current subscription is good, var quota equals user dot current subscription dot quota. That I believe is our user quota, correct? It is. So I'm going to say payload. Here we go. And that's that. So this is get quota. Now I think what I want to do, just like I did the load user quota or the load user method, because I'm going to be working with this quota object an awful lot. I'm going to run down here. Actually, no, wait. I'm going to grab this stuff. not async. User ID. Now, log token consumption, release quota, load user, private, async, task, user quota, load user quota, string user ID, paste that in there. And I'm just going to return that. Okay. So here's load user quota, load user, await, and that should be good. Log token consumption, I can shrink up. Next things I gotta do are private async task of user resource, save user, user resource, user, throw new, not implemented, because the only way we can save a quota is to save the user. I'm going to need to do a little bit more thinking on this stuff. Just a little bit. Because we're going to have operations that we want to perform on that user object. So we've got load user quota. Cool. Yeah. I'm going to come back to this stuff later. I need to take a more extended break than just a couple of minutes. But I do want to finish implementing this behavior this afternoon. I'm going to have to figure out a user builder type thing so that I can migrate out of SQL and into this structure. But the good news is I'll be able to use that builder for other things like my admin subsystem. So none of the code that I'm writing, even the test code that I'll be writing for this, is going to go to waste, and that makes me incredibly happy. I hate wasted effort. Because wasted effort, when there's money on the line, wasted effort equals dollars. And anytime I can avoid wasting my effort, the better. Yeah, I believe it. Although I've been out to Vegas, Vegas is freaking dry, yo. I've anytime I've gone, it's been like late April, early May type time of year, and it hasn't been too brutal. But I could only imagine what Vegas in the depth of summer would be like. I've never spent any time in Arizona. I've always flown over it on my way either to California or Nevada. But yeah, I have friends and acquaintances that live in Arizona, and it is just brutally hot there. So yeah, this session we got an awful lot of work done um, on the metered usage access. We're not yet ready to spin it up and start testing it because we've got a good bit of work left, a good bit of code left to write before I can start migrating objects and reading, writing, making changes in accordance with these service contracts. But I'm going to keep at this after I end the stream because I do want to get this implemented sooner than later. I'm going to break my usual rule that I only do work on stream just so that I can get this thing done and move towards actually releasing the product, or at least the soft launch of the product. So I'm going to call this a day. I'm going to get things posted over to YouTube, all of that stuff, and then keep going on this Quota access table provider component. And then I will show y'all how I get it integrated into the rest of the system. It's as simple as updating a couple interfaces because I do need that user ID in a few places that I didn't before. And it's just really modifying less than 10 methods throughout the entire stack, and then swapping out the SQL Server provider for the Azure Tables provider, and then we're pretty much done. So until tomorrow, take care of yourselves. Do the thing. If you haven't done the thing already, please go do the thing. Have a safe night. And until next time, happy coding. Take care, C Films. It's always fun when you hang out, dude.